Yeah, we're all salesy, like car car salesman
Is
people who,
that like a car salesman vibe?
yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Car
I think
salesmen tend to have a bad vibe.
we're just above used car salesmen and below attorneys, maybe.
Mm. Yeah. So the perception of the public is one thing. I think a lot of salespeople are going to get that though. You know, anytime that you're a middleman or kind of in the way between what they want and getting it, like, you know, you can get that reputation. But what do you think it is about real estate professionals that give that off? Other than the fact that we're salespeople, what do real estate agents do to put us in that position?
Well, I think it's partly just the fact that there's so much money on the line. And so when we get it wrong, it's hugely painful.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think people have the perception that we make way too much money, and especially now with all the technological advances with AI, and they think all we do is open a door and anybody can do that, and we make too much money and we're going to be obsolete, don't you know, because of all this advanced technology.
Right. So, you know, if we're trying to get some clarity here around how the public perceives us, they can do our job. They don't need us. We're like a fitness center. You can go out and exercise without going to a fitness center. You can do it yourself. But when will the results come? Will the results come easier with the help of someone else or by yourself? I think most people would say that would be an easier journey if you had somebody else to help you along the way, especially if you've never done it before. Um, so let's flip that around for a second. So that's from the agent perspective looking out and people outside looking in. But there's a curtain in real estate, right? We operate in a sandbox among agents, and we get to see and interact a lot of times in ways that the public doesn't get to see how we treat each other. Public doesn't get to see the showing feedback. The public doesn't get to see those things. So, what we're talking about today is what can we do as real estate professionals to operate among our colleagues so that we stand a better chance at winning negotiations, stand a better chance at getting our offer accepted. Um, just overall, you know, being more efficient in the business. So, um, you do. So let's just agree at the beginning of this call, we're not going to call anybody out personally or professionally. We're not going to name names. Some of you guys may hear a scenario or a situation or something like that where I know what you're talking about. I've had that happen, but please don't call anybody out. It's not fair to them because if they're not here to defend themselves, it's not cool. So, so let's talk about this for a second. When is our first interaction? Like when we're going to operate with another real estate agent on the other side of the transaction, when does that first interaction happen?
When you schedule a showing, you can call them right before.
Yeah. Yeah. So usually, if you're on the buyer side, that first interaction happens, or even if you're on the seller side, when two agents first kind of catch wind of each other potentially working on a deal, it's when the listing agent receives a showing notification, or if the buyer's agent sends it. So, what are some good practices? One, not to be annoying. Two, to be efficient and represent your client. And three, to gain the information that you need. What are some good practices at that juncture to kind of start that relationship off the right way?
I mean, if you're on the listing side, you're calling the buyer's agent that's about to show the product that they're trying to sell. So give them as much ammo as possible to sell the house to their client.
So, what if you're the listing agent and there's 30 showings on the property? Do you have time to do that?
You should try.
Yeah. What happens if you know it's going to be a hot property? Actually, this could be a practice that you do all the time. Um, but what happens if you know it's going to be busy and you're not going to be able to call every single agent before they show your listing? Or maybe you got 15 listings and just don't have time for it.
You could do a mass email of such to get them that information.
Yeah. Anybody
Then
else?
the note through showing time, or like copy and text, or copy and paste a text message. Sometimes I'll do that and just send it out to all the agents, whatever I want them to know, or ask them to call me back, or whatever it is.
Put
Yeah,
it in the agent remarks.
If
Yeah.
they read them, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line of being annoying though. Like I don't know that I need a call before I show a house personally. I will say, like, as a listing agent, I think it's super important to have a very detailed listing, to have attachments, to have updates, to have ages. And if I was gonna send a text prior to a showing, it would be, hey, I just wanted to make sure that you saw all the attachments. We've got agents, because a lot of agents aren't looking at that stuff, right? We know that. And look, I don't judge people. I get it. Life gets busy. But as long as they have my full listing, there's not that much. And I'll tell you one thing I really don't like is when a buyer's agent calls and says, hey, I'm about to show your listing. What should I know? It's like, dude, what do we do? I don't know. Do you have questions? Yeah, so like you've got to be careful, like have a purpose. Otherwise it can be annoying.
That's solid gold right there. I have people all the time, mostly buyers, that reach out on our listings and they say, can you send me some info? It's like, hell, I can send you everything you want. Like, what, you want a link? I'll send you the link to our website. I'll send you the link to the MLS. What kind of info are you looking for? TJ, I'm with you. I don't need a phone call. If I'm a buyer's agent, I'll reach out if I have questions about it. As a listing agent, what we try to do in showing time, there is a feature where you can upload your disclosures. You can upload a feature sheet. You could put instruction. I will read the showing instructions before I read the agent remarks sometimes. So that is another chance that you have to relay information to a buyer's agent, so that they're not wasting their time, or so that they have a better idea. Now, if you've got a property that has some pretty specific, hey, you need to know this before you show it, or there's something unique about this property, then, prepare a text, make the phone call, shoot the text over, something like that. On the buyer side, right? Like, one thing that you can do to be a better agent. Number one, here's a practice that I do. I'm going to throw these out and I want you guys to build on it. Like, if I leave anything out, I want you to tell me what you do. So number one thing I do, if I have a buyer that says, hey, can we go see 123 Main Street? If I've done a thorough buyer consultation and I know what they're looking for, or if I've spent some time showing this client property, if they've said no to certain properties for certain reasons, it's too close to this, or it doesn't have X, Y, and Z, or it has something that they don't want, too much work needed, I will study that property for about 5 minutes before I agree to show it to them, because there's sometimes where I'll call the buyer and say, hey, did you know this thing had a cistern? And they're like, I don't know what that is. I'm like, well, that's where your water comes off your roof, or you have to have it brought in if there's a drought. And they're like, I don't want that. I'm like, okay. I just want to make sure you understood that before we went out and looked at it, because I would have wasted half my Saturday, and so would you. And now we're out here, we could have been doing anything else. And now they feel like they've wasted their time. So it actually helps your client. Here's the other thing too. You go to show a house, or maybe you've already shown it. Buyer has interest. What's the first thing that the buyer's agent does when they call the listing agent? What's the first question that they say?
You have offers.
Do you have offers? Should we do that or should we not? Is there a better way to ask that question? Trying to get a conversation started here.
Anything in hand? I don't know.
Or you could say, what are the sellers specifically looking for to make our offer get accepted? Do they need time after the closing? I mean, I usually ask kind of a series of questions too, sort of specific, as after you've seen it, if there are people living there, how quickly, what are their goals with it? I mean, we can kind of get a little more information and read between the lines. And sometimes they'll just outright tell you. I like when they just tell you.
Well, and so I'm going to throw this out there, because I think in order to be a good negotiator, you've got to be a great asker of questions. And sometimes you've got to ask the question and just shut up, because sometimes when you give silence a chance to work, the other agent, we should, like this momentum group right here, you guys are a strong group of agents. I know nobody in this room is going to misrepresent a client. But if you give another agent the opportunity, they will open their mouth so wide and stick their foot in so far that you can just take that one to the bank. You're going to win the negotiations on it because they just told you everything you needed to know to win that deal or get a better price or whatever that is. So there's questions that you can ask as a buyer's agent. If the house has been on the market for a while, what questions do you guys usually ask? Like, hey, my buyer's interested. What questions would you ask?
Why do you think it hasn't sold yet?
Okay.
You mean
I
like short
would
of like,
kind of
what the hell's wrong with it?
yeah.
Kinda, yeah.
No, I just ask what feedback they've received.
Yeah.
They're usually pretty forthcoming.
Yeah. So careful asking the why question. I mean, obviously that's what we're trying to get at. Like, why do you think it hasn't sold? But that's everybody's question. And when you ask somebody, even your clients, you ask them, hey, why did you say that? Or why is that? It puts people on the defensive. So careful asking what is it about this house that you think's caused it not to sell is a better way to ask that same question. I like asking the question if there's a house that's been on the market for 60 days, maybe no price reductions, maybe they have had price reductions. I'll ask the question, has the seller received any offers that didn't work out? Because that tells me that, oh, well, we did get an offer. The seller, we didn't come to terms. So it tells me another buyer thought it was a low, it was overpriced as well. And it tells
Also,
me
you'll
that the
definitely,
sellers,
depending on the reaction of the agent, you'll sometimes get information that you need because then you'll know, oh, the seller's just really stubborn. They don't know, or whatever. I mean, that's a good question.
yeah. Has the seller received any offers that didn't work out? Tells me, yeah, they got an offer. They're not negotiable. They're not willing to come down to reality on this thing. So I can go back to my client and say, hey, we can try, but the seller seems to be holding on to this number for some reason.
I always like saying if it's been sitting a while, like, hey, I'm sure your seller's getting frustrated. I've been in your spot. It's not fun. My clients are interested, but they don't love the price. Um, how frustrated are the sellers? Do you think if we wrote something aggressive that they'd consider it? And depending on the space there, I can usually get a feel for where they're at. And if they'll tell me the sellers are frustrated, that's in my opinion an advantage in the negotiation because I don't care how mentally strong you are, 30 days on the market will make you start to break. It does. And if I know that they're at breaking point, then I know that agent's going to work for me, not against me.
I like asking the question sometimes. Client really likes the house. They're concerned about the price. Did the seller choose the price or did they take your advice when you listed it on the price? Because that's going to tell me, well, if the listing agent was the one who suggested this price and it's not working out, they're going to try to defend it. If they get an offer and the seller set the price, they're going to go to the seller with well, I told you so. I told you my price was the right one and you were overpricing it. They may not say that, but that's kind of you'll have the listing agent on your side when you're trying to negotiate because they also have the same opinion.
I also think on the buy side, if you're writing an offer below ask and it's your buyer's offer, meaning they don't want to negotiate, which is often, right? If it's been sitting a while, write it as a best and final. Because like as a listing agent, you're going to counter because it's a natural thing to do. And when the buyer just shuts down, like it's so counterproductive. So if we're just really direct on the front end, like, hey, they like it, this is their price, we're really not willing to negotiate. This is the best and final, but I'd love you to present it and see if we can get it together. I think that goes way better than just not responding or sticking still after the counter without a heads up.
Yep. Had a situation happen over the weekend where I thought it was very valuable information and it reminded me of some questions that I usually like to ask. So when I'm on the listing side, what are some questions? Well, I'll throw this out there. When you're on the listing side and you get an offer, you don't want to go digging and asking the entire, asking personal information or trying, but you do want to find out. I want to know how solid this buyer is, right? So the question that I asked this agent, and I feel like this agent may have misrepresented her client just a little bit because it gave me some ammunition when we got into multiples. I asked this agent, has your client made offers on anything up to this point? No, I said, how long has your client been looking? And it was like something like a few months. And I said, have they made offers on anything? And I just got real quiet. And she said, well, she's been under contract on 2 so far, and she's backed out of both of them because the inspections were terrible.
Not
Now,
good.
what's wrong with that? I'm on the listing side. She just gave me that information, and we're expecting multiples because we're getting a lot of activity. What's wrong with that? What she just told me?
You're not going to take the offer.
Yeah, it's like so you basically just told me that your client's going to nitpick this house that was built 70 years ago or 80 years ago or whatever.
I mean, on the contrary, you should be doing everything you can to make that agent want to work with you and your buyer.
Me, like the listing agent, should be doing everything to make the buyer want to work with us, or
No,
the
no, no.
buyer's agent?
You as a buyer's agent should be doing everything in your power to let them know that this is going to be a great experience.
Yeah.
Even though it wouldn't be the truth in that case, but
And if I'm the buyer's agent, I don't have to answer that question. I can just say, you know what? We've seen a lot of houses. None of them have worked out so far. That's it. The less you say, the better. Represent your clients with a fiduciary, I don't know, represent their best interest. Like by telling me your client's backed out on 2 deals because of the inspection so far, you kind of just threw your client under the bus.
Aaron, one of the things that I'll tell you right there, that if it's you representing the same buyer that has no longer found a house yet, you're going to not be in the situation 3 times, because you're either going to take that buyer and tell her how it is. And that, if she's a single woman, first time home buyer that is scared to death of a 70-year-old house, you're going to look at her and go, honey, maybe we just need to go look at some new construction. So you just have to remember, when you're dealing with those type of agents, as a listing agent, you're not going to work with this agent no matter what she said. So, because she can't handle her client. So that's what,
Teresa, I love your Mount Sterling self. You just coming in here with that honey. I can't call somebody honey. And I mean, I love it.
Okay, then maybe I'd say, sweetheart, here's what we're going to do. But you know what I mean? You
I
would
know
never
exactly
be
what
in
you
that
mean.
situation with the third offer with a girl that's backed out of 2 deals because of buyer's remorse or home inspections or whatever.
Yeah. And if I'm the buyer's agent and they back out of 1 deal because of an inspection, especially 2, I'm probably going to redo that buyer consultation and say, hey, we're looking at some older houses. Let's just make sure that this is the route we want to be on, right? Maybe we want to go to a condo, something that doesn't need, doesn't have box gutters. Like, let's go with something a little different here.
Exactly.
Let's kick it back to, we're the listing agent. What are some questions that we could ask a buyer's agent if we want to represent our seller well?
You could ask about if they've already been pre-approved and if they've already passed all of the documentation over to the lender.
Okay. I like it.
Did you ask if, as the listing agent, what questions do we ask the buyer's agent?
Yeah, I have a buyer, and I've let's just say that I've sent over an offer on your listing, and you just want to make sure you're representing your seller properly. You're going to ask me some questions. What are some good questions that you can ask me to make sure my buyer's good?
About have the buyers actually seen the property?
That's a good one. That's
I've been burned on that.
Yeah.
I would make sure that they really are not contingent on like selling another property, because I've had that come up, not often, but every once in a while they just conveniently forget to check that box. And then it's like, you look at it and you have to call them and say, now you didn't check this box. Does that mean they're contingent upon selling a house? Oh yeah, but we've got to, sometimes there's a little something.
So here's the other thing. If you ask a buyer's agent, is this contingent on another sale? If the lender hasn't told them that it's contingent and the buyer doesn't know to tell you, that buyer's agent may say, I had this happen with another agent before. He's like, hey, they don't have to sell their house to buy. Well, I've now started asking most of the buyers who come with pre-approvals. I usually ask them, I don't ask them, is it contingent? I say, do they own another house? And if they're like, no, they don't own anything else, is they're a first-time home buyer, like, great, I don't need to ask if it's contingent now. But if they tell me that they own another house, I will even confirm with the lender sometimes. Hey, buyer's agent tell me that they don't have to sell the house. I just want to make sure from you, do they have the funds to close on this without selling their other house?
I think open-ended questions are great. Usually what I'll say is, hey, share with me a little bit about your buyer, their situation, how long you've been working with them.
I love that because it gives the other agent an opportunity to just throw it all out
Yeah,
there.
they'll just go. They'll go, well, we've been looking for a year, and they'll tell you everything. And then you just have to be quiet longer than you feel like being quiet.
So
TJ, I
that
missed
is
that. What did you say? Sorry. Can you just
Share,
repeat that?
sure. Share with me a little bit about your buyer, their situation, and how long you've been working with them.
Okay.
That's
Aaron,
enough
have you
to
been,
move on.
yeah, Aaron, have you been burned and that's why you ask what you do?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, more than once actually. And like, it's always like I think I got it figured out, and then somebody figures out a new way to screw something up, and then I have to put new systems in my practice to make sure that we don't screw it up. But here's one thing I want to talk about, because this momentum group's about building stronger agents, making sure everybody is representing their clients well, keeping deals together. So TJ, you and I both know if we ask that open-ended question, there's some agents out there that'll just, right? They'll just give it all up. They'll tell you, hey, she's going through a nasty divorce. She's got to find a place by the end of the month, or she's going to be homeless. All right, let's go. Or, you know, you give somebody an opportunity, they don't know when to shut up. So let's talk about that. What do you guys think? If you got the question that is, tell me a little bit about your buyer, or if you get an open-ended question, how should I be thinking as a professional agent to respond?
You got to give them as little as possible. Yeah. Really great people. Financing's clean. We've looked at some houses, and this is the first one they really fell in love with. That's it.
Yeah. Or you could say, been working with them for a while. Took them a little while to get motivated, but now we've been out looking for a few months. They know exactly what they're looking for, and this is it. I've got them set up with my favorite lender, got them pre-approved. They've run them all the way through underwriting, and they're a strong buyer.
It
They
also
don't need to know.
greatly depends on the situation that you're in. So as the buyer's agent, you should have called the listing agent in advance and said, hey, what are your sellers hoping for in an offer? That's awesome. My buyers can absolutely do that, and they love the place. So if you're in a multiple offer situation, you're already coming off as friendly and like you're going to walk in competitive. And then obviously you're going back to your buyers, whatever, talk to them about the offer. You're submitting the offer. Now you're having that conversation again with the listing agent. You're really going to butter everybody up there. My buyers are phenomenal. You're doing a phenomenal. Thank you so much. Like the home showed so well. You gave them such good advice. So if you guys ever hear all these compliments from me, now you know it's because my buyers wrote the offer that you guys need to accept. But the being overly communicative, but like TJ said, holding it close to the chest on all of the other reasons as to how you came about this house is very important. As the listing agent, though, I lean heavily on my conversations with the lender about the offer, asking questions like, hey, this offer just came through and I believe we have a mutual client on it. So they offered this price and they were asking for this much in closing costs. Is that something you had prepared to do with them? Because I have had in the past too, where the buyer and the buyer's agent were more kind of newer to the whole process and they were just kind of doing things willy-nilly, and the buyer said that they were good for it. And then the lender was like, hey, actually, let me just call them really quick and kind of see what's going on. And then as it turned out, they had written an offer that they really couldn't have ever upheld.
Ooh. Yeah. I can tell you right now, if I'm on the listing side and you submit an offer, if I've never heard your name before, I'm looking you up. I want to see how many sales you've done. I want to see if you're experienced. I want to see, if you operate in a certain price point. Have you only sold new construction and you're making an offer on a house that was built in 1890? Like, I want to know. I'm going to gather as much information as I can because I want my seller to know how competent you are in working, on the deal. Here's a thing I'll throw at you guys. Have you ever had this? Those of you who are listing agents, or if you've ever listed a house, have you ever had somebody, an agent, say something like this? Well, my client likes the house, but the front sidewalk's settling and the gutters over there look like they might be leaking, and all the caulk around the windows around the outside of the house looks pretty rough. But I think we're gonna be writing an offer up. How's that sound?
Sounds like they're trying to
Promising.
prep you.
Well, I mean, my first thought is like, well, did I know about that or did I not? Is the house priced appropriately for those kind of things? Is it normal? My second thought is, are you going to try to get us under contract and just completely rip us after you already know about these things? So there's some things, if it's fresh on the market and there's a lot of showing activity, if I'm a buyer's agent, definitely not saying that. The only way that I'm divulging any of that information is if I'm coming in low and I want to let the listing agent know why. And maybe it's been on the market for a little bit. If it's been on the market for like 2 days, I'm not saying any of that stuff. Let's get it under contract and take the next step after that. I don't want you to feel like we're high maintenance here.
Aaron, the other thing I'll tell you on what you said earlier about throwing your buyer under the bus professionally, like, how you approach working with a listing agent. The way I go into, of course, after, the years of business that I've been in, I don't really talk about my buyer at all. I just basically put it all on me. And I tell them my background, my experience, the lenders I work with. And, so therefore I can't really get in trouble for misrepresenting my buyer because I didn't really say anything other than I have them prepared. You do want to work with me because I have my buyer under control. And, in the fact of, how we're going to get to the closing table. And again, like someone else said, as far as, make them your best friend and explain to them that, we're going to work on this together because, how many, especially since I don't know a ton of agents that are out there right now, I have to prove to, somebody that's maybe just been in the business for 2 years, this is going to go really well. And, and then if my offer is a little bit lower and they love to coming back because, I just was in a little bi-level sale the other day that literally had 35 showings and 17 offers. And I was the only cash offer with my client. And, she goes, oh, but the net, on the others. And I said, I can close in 2 weeks without an appraisal. And you are already, you're talking to me about numbers that are $5,000 higher than your best appraisal. Do you really want to go there? But, you do you, and, I can get you there in 2 weeks. But I don't really talk a whole lot about the buyer, which I think keeps me out of real estate jail, on that deal.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned that I've screwed up before. Yes, I am human. I've screwed up more times than I'd like to admit, but there were times I want to see some head nods or some thumbs up if you guys have done this before. There were times where I felt like I understood the buyer. I felt like the buyer was headed this way. We know what's going on. Buyer's headed this way. They went home. They hit up Google. They give me a call back, and then they went whoop, hard left turn. So I'm telling the listing agent, hey, here's what I believe. Here's where the buyer's at. Here's where we're at. And then the listing agent talks to their client. We get the thumbs up, and then all of a sudden I'm calling them back, eating my words because the buyer had changed their mind and I didn't even know about it. So, a lot of times as agents, we can get information and we can be like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Send it on over. And then we end up calling the other party back and be like, that wasn't good. It didn't work out. So, what I do a lot of times now is they say, would the buyer do this? And I'll say, I'll have to run it past them. Let me check, send it over. And then I go to my buyer, I check with them. And then once they've agreed, I send it over. I do not speak for my clients without asking anymore because they go hit Google or they talk to Uncle Jimmy, who used to be an electrician, and then it just screws everything on up.
That's super important. And one thing, like, and I know most of us have learned this the hard way, like, don't ever tell your clients anything that was presented verbally, hey, we're going to be writing an offer. I've got a listing right now. I've had that 3 times. We're going to write an offer, and then they don't write. And thank God I haven't told my client. There was a time, I remember my first year, I used to tell my client, like, hey, sounds like they're going to write an offer. And they get all emotionally high, and then it never comes. And I'm miserable. They're miserable. They feel like I lied to them. Like, so just play it safe.
Yep. What are some other, I guess, call it interactions or negotiation tactics or even pet peeves that we can discuss when it comes to working with other agents?
If you don't work weekends, can you like let me know ahead of time?
Is that even a thing?
Right.
It is.
Put
Okay.
them on the blacklist.
I mean, I respect it. I mean, I envy that. But I mean, you know, a lot of agents talk about, well, I list my houses on Monday and Tuesday because I that makes it where I don't have to work weekends. Well, did you just cost your seller a multiple offer situation? You know, could you have listed it on a Thursday or Friday and had a frenzy over the weekend and got them highest and best price? Or
Yeah.
did the seller not want to negotiate on the weekend? Did they not want to be bothered either?
Listen, I don't care if you don't want to. Just tell me. So at least we can manage our expectations. Otherwise, you send messages and you're like ghosted, and then you feel like a psycho because you're like, where is everybody?
Right. So here's one. I want to see what we get on this one. Is it okay not to leave feedback on a listing? You showed it. Well, let's talk about feedback.
Just leave feedback.
What'd you say?
So
What'd you say, TJ? I didn't hear it all.
obnoxious. Takes to me. I cut out. Sorry. I said, yeah, I think everybody should leave feedback. I think it takes 2 minutes. I think it's professional courtesy. I might be unstable. Sorry.
No, you're good. Keep going. Yeah. So, anybody else? Who? Oh, you don't have. I'm not going to ask you to call yourself out. Does anybody think feedback's stupid?
I'll call myself out.
Okay.
I'm happy to do it. I do leave feedback as a general rule. I leave feedback, but sometimes if I know like my buyer might be kind of wavering a little bit, I maybe will wait a little while to leave the feedback because maybe we're seeing another one we're really looking forward to or whatever the case is. But sometimes there are ones that for whatever, it's usually a personal reason that I won't leave the feedback. Either the listing agent was already like just up in the grill or rude or aggressive or something like that. Sometimes I won't. But also, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but like now they're saying that you could be liable because you might be leaving feedback that doesn't necessarily represent what your buyers say. I mean, have you heard this all? Have you guys been following some of this? I've just kind of read a few little articles here and there. So I think now it just made me think about what my feedback is. I think I'm just a little more cognizant of it. But yeah, so I'll call myself out. And sometimes I don't, not as a general rule, I do, but there are times when I'm like, I don't know. I'm gonna leave this one alone.
What else?
Or like
Opinions on feedback.
my mom always says, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Well, okay. I'll wait to weigh in on my opinion on feedback. Christina, you unmuted?
I was going to talk about your previous topic. I mean, I try to always leave feedback. You know, we all want to get the feedback. We need the feedback. So
That's what I was gonna say.
we should be leaving it, you know?
You know, I
Brad, you
agree
look,
as well. I think it's a professional courtesy to leave feedback, and even if the house is a, piece of you know what, I think it's a courtesy, and I also think it's professional courtesy to say, not dog a house. You know what I mean? Just put it in there. Hey, my client was not interested. This is not the right home for them. But expand on that, but be professional about it. But I want to bring up something that we were talking about. Different objections and ways to handle it. I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts on, because we all have those buyers out there that have no money, right? And they're needing eight, nine, $10,000 in closing costs in a very competitive market. And obviously, a lot of those people get beat out. And then also the difficulty of selling or buying and selling with that contingency, because guess what? We've got 4 or 5 of them right now that, clients that we've sold homes to that, they've been there 2 or 3 years. They don't have a ton of equity, most of them, well, I don't know, I've outgrown this house, or this is not the right house for me, and I want to sell and go buy something else, but obviously I got to sell this house first. So I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about overcoming those two objections when you're
So
presenting an offer.
yeah, I'm gonna put the pause button on that one for a second. I'm gonna say what I was gonna say on feedback, and then we'll loop back around because that is a good topic, bud. I want to cover that, and I'm sure a lot of other people want to hear it too. Here's my last thing I'll say on feedback. If you change the way you look at feedback, it might help you out. When you present an offer on a house, who influences the seller's decision on accepting what offers? Typically, the listing agent, right? If I'm going around showing houses and I never leave feedback, is it a big deal? No, it's not a big deal. But do I remember it? You bet your butt I remember it every single time. I know who leaves feedback and I know who doesn't. And there's times as a listing agent when you need a little help. You need the buyer's agent to say, hey, it seems like it's overpriced. If it were priced about $10,000 lower, I feel like you'd have more interest. Or if you did this, it might help. Cut the grass for God's sake, or whatever. Just like give me some feedback that I can take back to my seller. If we're not selling, help a brother out, right?
Do you ever, Aaron, do you ever call the listing agent, especially if it's someone that you might know, and say, how detailed do you want this feedback? Because I've done that before where I've showed a house and it was terrible. And I'll call the listing agent, especially if I know him, and say, I'm happy to leave you some feedback, but how much do you need?
Yes, I remember doing that. I don't know if I don't know who it was, but I remember the agent called me immediately after the showing, and they said, "What'd you think?" And I said, "Well, we were expecting it to be a certain way, but it was kind of worse, And I think if you dropped it about 20 grand, it'd be right in the ballpark for offer." She goes, "Can you do me a favor and say exactly that in the listing feedback for me, please?" And the next thing I saw the price get dropped, and about 2 weeks later, it was pending. And she said, "Thank you. I needed somebody else to say it other than me." And there you go. So if you look at it that way, agents are helping agents get property sold out there. If you put your reputation out there to help other people in your career here in our sandbox, good karma will come back to you. Going back to Bud's question, right now we're in the heat up part of 2026 where things are popping. You got buyers that are asking for closing costs. You got sellers that are going contingent because they've got their house under contract and they need to make an offer contingent. Let's have it. I mean, we got a lot of experience on this call. What are your guys' tips and tricks on helping out either a buyer who needs the closing costs or needs some concessions, or the seller who needs a seller to work with them on the contingency?
I think kind of out the gate, the obvious things that we all are familiar with are you can go over list price, depending, of course, to build in your closing cost. And then if the comps are there to support it, one of the things that I've done in the past was go ahead and run comps that support the higher price so that the listing agent knows that I'm working on their behalf in order to meet that new price with the appraiser potentially down the road. But then meeting them on the other terms. So if something that's important to the seller is post-closing occupancy, obviously giving that. Some of those things that check off the boxes, but helping the buyer understand and set the adequate expectations that, hey, in comparison to other offers in this area right now in the market, we're in a very competitive state. So we're going to want to make sure that we leverage as much as possible to put you in first position on the table when the seller's considering it. So that's why we're going to go so above and beyond on XYZ so that they overlook where you might have a lesser offer than someone who's all cash, no contingencies, right? Setting their expectations from the very beginning that the buyer's going to have to put their strongest foot forward. But realistically, what I tell people on the contingency side as buyers is that they're just going to have to sell their current home first before they look for their next home. And I figure out that plan with them. And if for whatever reason they cannot sell first before they buy next, then we just talk through all of their options to make sure that they're clear in the very beginning. We've explored all the options of selling before they buy and help them clearly understand how their offer is going to be looked at with a really cold contingency versus a warmer, already under contract, already through inspections contingency.
What else? I know you guys got some tricks up your sleeve.
I think
Well,
sometimes
I
you have to
oh, go ahead.
counsel a buyer to go to a lower price range so
Mhm.
that they've got room to bid it up. If they're in a tough price range, we may have to look a little lower. And I know that's tough for some of these first time home buyers, but we might have to wait and look for things that have been on the market a little while where you might have a little more negotiation room.
Anybody else?
Well, I was going to say earlier, so I always tell my buyers that part of my value to you is to, and immediately once I know that you're interested in a property, to build a strong rapport with the agent on the other side, for two reasons, because we want them to know, we want them to want to work with us. We want them to know that there's a professional on the other end who's going to do a great job and make sure that the transaction goes smoothly. And it gives them trust in you as a buyer. But secondly, because I want to be able to get as much information out of them as possible. And that helps to put you in a better position to make a strong offer and so forth. So I think, and the other thing I tell my buyers, and I mean, it's tough if they don't have a lot of cash flow, but this is where, you have to work with the lender and just do your best. But I think I always tell my buyers, like, there are about 6 things like that sellers are primarily looking for in an offer. And you've got to cover all those bases in as strong a way as you can. And so it blows my mind when I hear an agent say, well, I didn't write an appraisal gap, because I mean, it's going to appraise. Doesn't matter. Like, if it's competitive, you probably need to write an appraisal gap. Why? Because you got to cover all those bases so that when the seller looks at the offer, they're looking at all these high points and they're going, oh, wow, wow, wow. Oh, they know what they're doing. They're right. That's a strong offer. They're serious.
What does the seller look for in an offer? What's the number one thing you guys think they look for?
Price.
Okay. What's number two?
What's going to come home in my pocket?
That's price, essentially.
Yeah, path of least resistance, closing terms, inspections.
The least risk.
Yeah, security. They're looking for security. Is this
Right.
a rock solid offer or not? If I've got a buyer that is they need $5,000 to $8,000 in closing costs, maybe 9 or 10, depending on what's going on in their world. And if I'm going to need the seller to work with us a little bit, is it possible that your buyer could have a home inspection done prior to making an offer and release hey, no inspections, we'll take it as is. You're not going to have to worry about it. Yes, we are building in our closing costs, but we've built that on top of the price to cover your net. So we can go ahead and order the appraisal as soon as we go under contract. We don't need to wait till an inspection's done because we've already done it. Now, does it have to be a $500, $600 home inspection with all the bells and whistles and all that stuff? No, they can have a contractor or somebody they trust come through, take a look at it for them. If that's an option, I mean, that's if your buyer has the resources. I would not be the one to suggest the inspector if they're going to write that offer non-contingent. I'd say, hey, do you have somebody who can inspect this for you? I can provide you a list of 3 to 5 of them. You can check in. And I would, spending $500 on an inspection before you even know you got the house is kind of risky too. So,
but in the market that we're in right now, I mean, as far as when you're talking about the 9,000 in closing costs, so that's my question: is that are you actually getting those type of offers accepted? Like, I mean, not in a multiple offer situation, right?
I think that was Bud's question. Is it's tough to get them accepted. So, what are the tactics?
Sometimes
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Teresa.
No, I was just going to say, I just think that, in the situation where Bud said, how do you get this contingency and that contingency? I think just setting the expectation to your buyer, you just have to sometimes just look at them and go, guys, I do not want you to be so unbelievably frustrated with this process. So here's how we need to do it. And you don't set these unrealistic expectations. Because in my opinion, that stuff's just not going to happen. Your buyer's going to be exhausted. You're going to be hated for everybody running around like a Pop-Tart. and you're just going to keep losing, losing, losing. So I think the best advice to do is truly prepare someone with, this is the way this is going to look. I know that there's 100, a million other agents that are going to go and let you look at houses, run and do this, run and do that. And you're, at the end of the day, you're just going to want to kill yourself. So when it's all said and done, this, just like somebody said in there, if you have to go under contract, you got to tell them, hey, temporary housing is where this has got to be. We have got to get you to be the strongest buyer ever to buy the best house, because why would you want your buyer to actually settle for less because they have to go and pay a premium on the crappy house because they have to have a house right now, because that house is going to disappoint them in less than a year to 2 years. Then they're going to come back to you and go, I really hate this house you sold me. And, so I think at the end of the day, you just kind of have to settle them down, put them in the best position for the rest of their future, whether it be the 3 to 5 or whatever, and just say, hey, I want you to get the best house that you can have, but this is how we have to do it.
That's 100% accurate. And Amy said the same thing. So, obviously if they're, we all know that the 250 and down is really, really tough to find. And then you're talking about $6, $8, $10,000 worth of cost. I mean, it's impossible. So we've had that conversation, and Amy said it. So if 250 is their max, hey guys, we got to look at 225 or 230 or something like that. Because if we got to end up at 250 with 10,000 a cost or 8,000 a cost, whatever. So you're exactly right. Managing expectations. And we've had this come up with our team where a lot of our, younger agents are trying to negotiate, those situations where, their buyer doesn't have a lot of money. And those are the challenges that we run into when we've got, less than 1,000 houses on the market in Northern Kentucky. And we're going back helping our agents to say, okay, this house is on the market at 260 or 270, which we know that's not many of them out there, but 260 or 270 has been on the market 40 days. This may be the one that you want to take your buyer out to see because there may be some room in that price. And to Aaron's point, what we do a lot of times, because we deal with every client imaginable, and what we do a lot of times is we'll call that agent and say, hey, to everybody's point earlier, it's been on the market 90 days. Obviously it may be, and I don't try to insult anybody, but I'll say, like everything in the market, it's a little bit inflated, probably. I know you got your hands full. TJ said that earlier, and I know you got your hands full, but outside of price, that appears that the seller's holding on to price. What else is going on with this house? What are the challenges in you trying to sell it? And you're right. 9 times out of 10, I'll say, yeah, it's a little overpriced. I told him to sell it for this. And I'm like, good, because we've got a buyer that's right here, but needs 8,000 in cost. Are you willing to work with us? Because I want to get him out there to see it, And we've used that tactic and sold those properties where just do that extra leg of work, because if it's on the market one day at 245 and it's a nice house, there's two ways to look at it. The listing agent listing it low to get in a bidding war to make them look great for their seller, or there may be a legitimate reason why it's 245. And but what happens with us is, something soon as something hits, some of our buyers agents are scheduling these showings and they need $10,000 in closing costs, and Sherry and I are like, oh God, we'll see what happens with this,
Here's
because it's just a challenge.
Here's a couple of things. Like, you got to get, first of all, as a professional, if you have a client that's going to take some extra time, you've got to ask yourself, is this a client that I can serve at a high level right now? Or do I need to refer this out to an agent who has more time and needs the business, right? That's question number one. Number two, let's say that you do have the time. What are you going to spend that time doing? Like Bud said, you're not showing them every house that hits the market. You're going to let it get through a few weekends before you go take them to see something if it's at the top of their budget. Question for the agents on the call. Do you have a search alert set up for sale by owners in your area, where you get emails when for sale by owners hit the market, when they do open houses, and when they do price reductions? For sale by owners don't get all the showing credit as a house listed on the MLS. It doesn't go out syndicated to all these sites. They're usually on one source, and then they post it on Facebook. That's about it. So you use the listings that aren't getting the attention. Call the for sale by owner. If they say, I'm not paying a broker, and say, great, here's what we'll do. If my buyer's interested, they can just make an offer, and then we'll build my price on top of it so that they'll pay me. How's that sound? Great. Moving on. So that's one thing that you can do. The other thing that you can do, if we're trying to overturn rocks and stones to find out, okay, I got a buyer. This is hard to find. Maybe I've got a contingent seller. Call your lender partners. Who do you have pre-approved right now who has a house to sell? Or who do you have that may have a listing coming up in the future where they would be okay with us bringing our buyer before they go on the market, right? We can go on the market. We can be patient. We can have their house pending already, have their house pending while they go shop, and everybody's patient on our side. So that is one way to go about it. These are, if you got the time to make those calls and do that kind of stuff, those are outside the box kind of things to do.
Aaron, where would you set up the for sale by owner search? Like do
Go
it
to
in
Zillow, set up an
Zillow,
account.
HomeShake? Okay.
Go to Zillow, set up an account. When you do your search, go to buy, and then under type of property, take out new construction, take out listed by agent, take out pre-foreclosure and all that other stuff. And then the ones that say listed by owner, click the button that says save for saving a search. And then I think there's a way that you can put alerts on it. I get an email every morning about 4 o'clock or 4:30, and it's like new listings that are for sale by owner that match your search criteria. So I know what's out there.
So you set that up for all your buyers? Sorry.
I have a broad for sale by owner search, and I get every
okay.
single one of them in the areas that I serve. I get a listing alert.
That's great. Thanks.
Real cool. We've had a lot of luck with contingent buyers, which are very difficult, right? Kind of the same situation. Like there's a lot of options. One thing that we've done a good job with is we just do buyer agrees to release earnest money to seller if they don't, get the home sold or under contract in time. That way the buyer has skin in the game, because that's why sellers don't take contingent offers. They're the only ones with skin in the game. If the buyer doesn't get it, they bail. So if you put up $1,500, you let your buyer know the risk. Say, look, we're betting on ourselves. We've got to price the home aggressively, and we've got to get it. I always have the listings ready to go. So I always say, we'll turn on the light switch tomorrow. We've got pictures. We've got everything ready to rock. Give us 14 days to get it under contract. And, seller figures, hey, I'll make $1,500 and lose 2 weeks. That's a decent deal.
Yeah. Like you said, have the listing ready to go. Get pictures way ahead of time. Even go get your favorite home inspector to do a pre-listing inspection. And if you're telling the other buyer, or the listing agent, that you're making an offer on, we've already got a pre-listing inspection done. Seller's already fixed all the stuff that we would deem necessary, and we've got photos lined up. They're already ready to put in there. You accept our offer, we go on the market tonight. Sign's already in the ground. All right. Let's see here. It's 10:55. You guys fired up? This has been a good call. You guys got something out of this? So remember, we all play in the same sandbox. If you impress me today because of your professionalism, leaving feedback, or the questions that you ask and how you conduct yourself, and then you need to make an offer on one of our listings or something like that, hey, we've got a good rapport, and I'm going to have a better relationship with you. We're going to be able to serve our clients at a high level. If somebody comes in and they send over a sloppy offer, they're not really conducting themselves in a professional way, that's a reflection on how they do anything's how they do everything. If they send you something over sloppy, that whole deal might be a little loose. So that reminds me too.
Did you see the chat?
What's up? What's it say?
Did you see the chat?
No.
About the question about the seller just waiting to see what the offer is before paying the buyer broker compensation.
Okay. Recently having discussions with my seller.
Maybe can we say that? Can we ask that on here? Because some of us are from different brokerages.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. We can't talk. We're not allowed to talk about percentages and price fixing.
Let's just use X, and we can do that.
I don't put a buyer agent commission in my contract. I tell my sellers that we'll see what that is when we get an offer, right?
And when you're talking,
isn't that what everybody's doing?
Yeah, that's
I can't even read this. What's the question?
I got it here. I'll read it real quick. What about on the seller side and paying the buyer's brokerage? Recently having discussions with my sellers, and they want to see what the buyers offer before they are willing to cover X% buyer broker. And I'll answer this real quick. That's completely fine. That's what sellers should be doing. And as an agent, what I'm going to say is fair enough. Most offers are going to come in with X%. And we're going to look at the net. The net is what matters. What's in your pocket? We don't really care where the money goes, right? It's about the check at the end. When a buyer's agent calls and asks me, hey, are they paying X%? I'm going to say, yeah, they understand how it works. Just write it into the offer and we'll do our best to get you taken care of. And that's it. So keep it simple, Mackenzie. It's not an objection. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Oh, and here's the other thing. When you're writing an offer, if you have the time, if you're writing it on your cell phone in a hurry, I get it, right? But if you're writing an offer up, in the part where you put the listing agent's information, like try to fill that out. It shows them that you're detailed enough and you go the extra mile enough to save them a little bit of work. It means more than you think. So because they may be fielding offers left and right. Some people are gonna notice that you took the time to actually put their email address where it goes and put their phone number where it goes. That's really helpful to some people. It's 11 o'clock. It's Monday. It's a fresh week. Go out there and kick ass this week, guys. We'll see you back here next week, 10 o'clock. Bring a friend. We'll see you.
Thanks, Aaron.